Hi, everyone. Welcome to LionRun Consulting's VC series. This is where we're going to be pulling back the curtain in VC to give founders insight into what happens behind the scenes and increase their likelihood to be able to successfully raise. I'm here today with Daniel Sass from A Moon Fund, a leading biotech and health tech VC fund, and Daniel comes with a wide variety of medical and business background, and he's going to give us a whole insight into what goes on behind the scenes in VC, so then you as a founder can prepare accordingly. We're going to be going behind the scenes of the due diligence process, how VCs evaluate different deals, and how you can successfully position yourself to be able to raise. So I'm really excited to have you, Daniel. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here with you, Nina.
Amazing. So we're going to kick it off, and I want you to just tell me a little bit kind of like about your background, how you got into VC.
Great. So I'm Daniel, originally from South Africa. My professional background is such that I was a medical doctor in South Africa, working specifically in ER. I've always been focused on health. Health is something that is deeply personal for me. And, working in ER, I kind of realized that health was very reactive. It was more sick care than healthcare. And being someone who's passionate about health, I wanted to be more on the preventative side.
Mm-hmm.
So I came to Israel about 5 years ago and did my MBA. And shortly thereafter, I joined Ori Cohen and Eran Segel at Pheno AI when they started the company and helped them scale the Human Phenotype Project internationally. Was there for about 4 years, and about 6 months ago transitioned into the VC side, where we kind of have an aerial view of similar companies that are transforming the future of healthcare. And this for me is a perfect combination of my background, where I get to combine the clinical side with the business acumen as well.
Amazing. And like, what, I guess, drew you initially to VC?
I have a really strong passion for health, technology, and business. And VC kind of operates at the intersection of those three. And as I said, you almost have front row seats to the most exciting technologies and innovation that will transform healthcare going forward.
Okay, so, at this point, you've probably already, really dug into the due diligence process and have seen a whole bunch of deals. So, this is for the whole purpose of what we're doing, why we're here today is to speak to the founders, to speak to, not only the biotech and the health tech founders, but really any type of founder that is looking to raise and break into VC. And so I want to be able, to hear your insight into, so far, what have you seen? How does the process... Can you explain, like, let's say you were talking to a first-time founder and they had no idea about VC or how they can effectively fundraise. They just are really, really technical in their industry, and this is the first time raising. What insight could you give them, or can you explain really, like, in a dumbed-down version, how that process looks like for them?
Sure. So as founders approach VCs, I think it's incredibly important to understand that you almost need to sell your business in a very clear, very crystallized and systematic way to the individuals on the investment team that will be driving this forward. Those would be the analysts and associates that will be the ones to have the first view of your company. What you want to make sure at this stage is that you almost spoon feed the analysts or associates with key information that they can take in order to drive your business, drive the diligence process forward. By doing that, in a setting where there's high deal volumes and we're seeing many deals a week, you can really stand out from the others if you're prepared in such a way that your investor materials are ready for those individuals to drive the diligence process forward.
So how would it look like for, let's say, a founder? Do they get in touch with you? Do they get in touch with the partner? How does that work?
So there's really two ways, probably more, but the best way, obviously, is a warm introduction. If you come warmly introduced with a credible track record, your chances of your company being at the top of the list are much higher. There's also the opportunity to come through Dealflow. We have a Dealflow email address in which founders email in these opportunities, but it's always better to come warmly recommended.
Yeah. So like, how do you prioritize? Like, are you guys constantly looking at the deal flow email, and then maybe the partner will say like, hey, I just met with a few like X, Y, and Z founder. You should also look at this, and then like you're just deciding which ones to look at and when.
So within VCs, there's usually someone responsible for the deal flow email, and as deals come in, they will almost, it's like traffic coming in. They will see these opportunities and direct them to relevant members of the team.
Wow. So then how many deals would you say like you're reviewing per week or even per day?
Dozens.
Yeah.
I would say dozens.
A week.
Dozens a week, yeah.
Wow. And like, so, and usually it comes in a form of an email, right?
Yes.
And how do you like, is there a form of an email that like a founder can send that you would prefer to see over another that would like grab your attention more?
So I think it goes back to what I said previously about being crystal clear. You almost want to have a tagline or something that elicits the receiving individual's attention so that they can read more. Because VCs are receiving dozens of these emails per week. And in order to stand out, you really need to catch their attention in the first 3 seconds.
Yeah, super interesting. And like when you get those initial emails, what do you typically like to see included? Like, again, this is like a very like either a cold outreach email, to the deal flow team, or an email that was sent to like the partner of the firms of someone who like he got warm introduced to initially. Like this is before you even get into the due diligence process, or this is like when you're really deciding that the yay or nay initially, just to even look farther if it's even captivating. So like what would you want typically like included there?
Most importantly is a short blurb that very accurately encapsulates what this company does and what their value proposition is and the market that they serve. So this is just a paragraph that anybody who receives the email can go and speak to their colleague and say, company XYZ is solving such a problem using this technology, and this is the traction that they have to date. It's almost like just a short paragraph of a few lines. But I think something really important and helpful to include in that email would be a teaser, almost a one-page executive summary of the company. If the VCs decide that this is interesting, they will request more information. And I would say the next step from there would be a non-confidential deck, something that describes the company without disclosing too many of the sensitivities. It would, for example, describe the unmet need, the market, the solution, and the story of that company to date and the traction. Very importantly would be to have a slide on why now, and what is this company currently looking to raise and what they're looking to do with those funds.
So you would ask for that's kind of considered, I would say, like maybe like a reader deck. Would you at that point, would you have already met with them? Like this is, let's say if it was like a cold, came through the normal deal flow pipeline. Like, I want any founder to feel like they have a shot. You know what I mean? Like, so if they didn't have a warm intro, which obviously it's always best to get a warm intro, but if they were coming through the pipeline, let's say through the deal flow email, you saw like someone on the team saw it and then they referred it to you to take a look. Do you then request a meeting with them before you even request more information, or will you still request more information before you even meet with them?
It is always good if the email comes across and it's simply a blurb with a teaser. What the VCs will normally do is then discuss that very briefly in kind of a screening meeting with the deal team, kind of like air traffic control, where we say, we received this opportunity, the company does XYZ, is this interesting to the team? If it is interesting, we would then go ahead and request a non-confidential deck so that I can get a better view of the company. And I would then proceed to ask this company for an introductory meeting.
Okay.
If that meeting goes well, we'd proceed from there, and we would request access to the data room after executing an NDA, for example.
And so then, that initial meeting, that introductory meeting is I guess for them would be a very high stakes meeting. Like, how would you say they should best prepare for it? Or how do you usually conduct those types of meetings? Is it conversational? Is it structured?
So these meetings are typically around 45 minutes in length, in which the company will present their non-confidential deck and really give us a view just over a few slides. This is not comprehensive. This is, call it 10 to 15 slides, very clear. who the company is, the unmet need, the solution that they propose, where they are in their development process, and why they're, very importantly, why this solution is differentiated from others in the market, or in a medical sense, why this solution is better than the current standard of care.
Mm-hmm.
And founders that can demonstrate clarity in this stand a really good chance of winning a second meeting.
Got it. So then after that meeting kind of will wrap up, you'll then, I assume you'll ask for like the whole NDA and then access to the data room before the next meeting?
So if this meeting goes well and there's still interest on the VC side, often VCs will execute an NDA
Mm-hmm.
and ask for access to the company's data room. In the data room, once we have access, we would be looking through various elements to understand this company better. It's very impressive and a really strong signal if founders can share access to the data room instantly
Mm-hmm.
and serve us with the requested materials as we ask for them. And what's even more impressive is if the founders can anticipate what we need.
Yeah.
And I believe this is where LionRun can really help and serve these materials before they're actually requested. This is a really strong signal.
So do you see like a lot of times you'll request for the data room and then there's that lag time for founder, because the lag time of response, because like maybe they wouldn't have put that together. They just didn't know what they needed. And then you guys are kind of like requesting it and it takes a lot of time.
Absolutely. I think that companies, founders are incredibly busy focusing on what they do best, building the company and executing the vision. And they might not be prepared for their fundraising. So when data room access is requested, sometimes there is a delay, and having a delay it doesn't help. It's not a strong positive signal. So if this can be a really seamless process upon which data room access is requested and we get access to what we need, and we don't have to request every document, because as the diligence process develops, it's already there. As the process develops, we will need more documents. If we can have those in advance, it makes the whole process so much smoother on the VC side.
Amazing. So can you give us insight into what types of materials you would want to see in the data room?
Yeah. So a data room needs to be...
Actually, maybe let's tell the audience, like, what even is a data room?
So a data room is access to a folder in which you have all of the company's information that you will need in order to seamlessly execute the due diligence process. So as you enter this data room or folder, you would have very organized and systematic folders that outline many elements of the company that investors would wish to see. These include, from our side, it would be clinical. So if you've done any clinical trials, we'd love to see that data there. We're incredibly detailed with that, going down to individual patient level data, financials, detailed business models, financial projections of the company. The company obviously has a board of directors and advisors. We'd love to see their bios and who they are. Any other investor materials, let's say we always want to refer back to the investor presentation, so we'd love to have that there too. And in the data room, we would also like to have a summary of all the meaningful engagements that this company has had. So it could be contracts that they have with customers, distribution agreements, JVs.
Yep.
All of this should be incredibly well organized and at the disposal of the investment team.
And how do you typically see like founders are sharing that information in the form of a data room? Like digitally, what does it look like? Or what do people commonly use?
Digitally, it's an online shared folder in which we have access to view all of these materials.
So like, do you see like just simply a Google Drive is commonly used, or are the people using different platforms?
It's not typically a Google Drive. There are various softwares, and there's many of them that companies are using in order to update and keep their data rooms investor ready. Yeah,
so it's actually interesting. So, like there's the platform DocSend, where you have like the DocSend link. And I saw like a LinkedIn post that said from a guy saying like, never share a DocSend link with an investor where they have to put in their email. And he essentially the argument was like, you shouldn't put another barrier for like investor to see the materials. But I kind of disagreed with that, because I was thinking like it's not like for the purpose of collecting data. It's for having insight into like viewing who's viewing your materials, and at the end of the day, like even though it's non-confidential, you want to know who's viewing that and get information, not like put another barrier for investors. So I'm curious, like, have you experienced that where you have to like put in your email and a DocSend link?
Yeah, so this does happen where we have to put our email in order to view the data room materials. I think it really helps the founders because they can see how actively the VC is reviewing their materials. It also serves the purpose of safety. Often if I access a data room and put my email gets printed on the back of all the materials I'm viewing, so that if that was to be distributed, my name is there. Let me answer your question with regard to barriers. Obviously, it should be seamless that you can access a data room without barriers, but I don't view putting in your email as a barrier. As long as the data room is organized and at your disposal, putting your email in, from my perspective, does not serve as a barrier.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned, I always hear this is the topic of like, should founders request for the investors to sign an NDA? And I feel like it's a little bit of a contentious topic because a lot of investors will say, no, I'm never going to sign an NDA because I see so many deals and that could potentially like compromise me. But I'm curious, like from your perspective, is it a red flag if a founder asks for an investor for you guys at least to sign an NDA? I mean, it sounds like it's part of your process, but
I don't think that it's a red flag. Many founders do request an NDA up front. What I do is when I look at deals, I try to solve this problem by requesting a non-confidential deck. Mm-hmm. And I believe that deck can be shared. It could even be on the company's website, for example. It tells the story of the company and equips us with what we need to know to start the process. If at a later stage we actually require access to the data room, I see that as a more appropriate time to request an NDA, either from our side or from the company's side.
Yeah, fantastic. So now I'm curious, like once, let's say, you've gotten to the point where you receive the data room, you're kind of like going a little bit deeper in terms of the due diligence. What type of like research usually do you have to do, or do the analysts have to do to like really just validate that, what the information that they're giving you and their assumptions are, I guess, in some sort of ballpark accurate or truthful? I'm curious, like, is that something that you guys have to do then?
Absolutely. I think that, it's all about storytelling at the end of the day, and founders are here to tell a big story, a compelling one, as to why their solution serves a big market, for example. And what we need to do on the investment side is not rely on the founders' data that they've prepared or the claims that they've made. We need to do our own independent research and then refer back to what the founders have sent us, and almost reconcile these so that we understand the reality of the market that this company operates in.
Sure. Yeah. Because and this is another kind of like argument or topic that I hear come up, like at least for the earlier stage companies, like around, pre-seed, seed. I would say Series A is it's a different story, but like around seed, a lot of founders, or pre-seed and seed, they'll say like, the investors know that what I'm saying or the information I'm providing them are assumptions. So why do I need that? You know what I mean? If they know it's assumptions and it's not concrete, then am I lying to them? Like, it's not really lying, but you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it can be very confusing for founders of like, yeah, but we're so early. Why do we need this? If it's just going to be assumptions anyway.
I think that this is particularly relevant to the early stages of companies, as you said. And for example, in the data room of an early stage company, not that I work on the early stage, but I'd imagine there's far less information there. There's less information because we know less about the market. Having assumptions is probably the best you can do at that stage. And I think it adds to the clarity of your vision. So having assumptions is important. They'll be refined later, and they might not necessarily be accurate at that time. But, I think this is still really important to have at that stage.
Yeah, like, look, that's pretty much what we tell our founders, like, that we're working with. It's like, at least show that you've thought through it. The idea that you have shown that you have thought through the strategy behind why you're doing what you're doing, I think shows that like, hey, you as a founder and the CEO that's driving the boat of this business has some sort of vision going forward of like where you're going and why you're doing that. And you're able to like effectively convey that to the investor.
Yeah, absolutely agree. You know, investors that are investing at the early stage will also, they know this is what they do every day. They know that your assumptions are likely to change and be refined over time, and they will walk that process with you, but you need a starting point. So having assumptions at the early stage, I think is still incredibly important.
Can you talk about kind of the different expectations of what you want to be able to see depending on the stage of the company? I think that's a very common question I get from founders. They're like, what do I need for my pre-seed and seed round versus what I'll need for a Series A, Series B, and how will that differ?
So from the seed and from the pre-seed and seed round, obviously you have a lot less information, but you should still have a really compelling story. You still need an executive summary. You need a crafted investor-ready pitch deck. You might not need a detailed financial model yet, but you need a plan. And I think that a timeline or a Gantt is something really important at this stage that shows investors that you know where you're going. At the growth stage, which is where I work, I think that there's a lot more data involved. Here you have a company that might have been around for 5 years already. They have they've got their story together, or actually stories are always evolving and changing, but they've got a better sense of who they are. The companies that I see have often run clinical trials, and they have data. They have some commercial traction, so they've got financial statements that we can depend upon. And to answer your question, at the growth stage, it's very important for the companies to have all of these documents very neatly detailed and accessible in their data room.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's literally what we say. And so I'm also curious, another, I don't know if it's contentious topic, not really contentious, but highly debated topic is like, your fund invests in biotech, health tech. So the types of founders that you're probably, if I'm assuming correctly, are like industry experts, right? Like usually they're, in industry or doctors or
yeah, absolutely,
like PhDs, right? Like in the industry for however many years, and like that's what they know. And then a lot of times what we see at LionRun, the types of founders that we're working with are like those types of founders who don't necessarily also have like that business acumen to like understand how to effectively pitch and convey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, do you see that a lot?
We see that all the time. Something I love most about what I do is I get to speak to the smartest minds out there, literally key opinion leaders in their fields, the best of the best. And often these individuals are, scientists or highly trained specialists. While they might have a really compelling opportunity on their hands, I think it all begins with storytelling. I think that these individuals often really need help by firms such as LionRun that can allow these individuals to focus exactly on what they do, which is the science, the innovation, the research, but to translate that into a compelling story, they might need some support. I think that's incredibly relevant.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And also, like a topic that we talk about a lot is kind of like this like language barrier between the founder and the investor. And it's not a language like an actual language, but it's the jargon that a lot of these founders will use because they're industry experts, and the associates or analysts at the firms are not always, they're obviously not going to have been PhDs or in the industry for 30 years. I think you're an anomaly because you were a doctor previously before, getting into VC. So I feel like you would really have a good understanding of the type of language and jargon and vocabulary that they're using to explain their businesses. But like, we see that this is like this communication barrier.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, like you got to like simplify what you're saying, because not everyone's going to know that acronym that describes like something that's actually really, really important for your business and for someone to understand. I don't know. So I'm curious, like from your perspective, like Do you see that a lot where there's this?
Yeah, absolutely. I see this all the time, and specifically working in a VC that's got a robust backbone on science, we see this all the time. And the individuals on the investment team are not all scientists. And you want to be able to enable any individual to tell your story. And simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, where anybody can tell your story. They do not have to be an industry expert. So, less of the fancy jargon is definitely better for investors to be able to communicate what your company does.
Super interesting. So when it comes to the actual, going back to the actual structure of like the decks that you see, is there like something that you commonly see that you feel like is not actually effective that a lot of founders think that they should be including in their deck or in their other materials?
I think I think I classically see decks that follow a similar structure, which is what's known in the VC world, starting off with, the company, brief description or tagline of what this company is, followed by the unmet need. What is the unmet need? How large is that? The market opportunity, and then the solution that this company proposes. And seeing as I'm working on the growth stage, also the traction that this company has had to date. Also really important to put a team slide in. VCs really want to know a lot about the teams they're working with. It's a true partnership. And we'd like to seeing badges, for example, of where these founders have previously worked, what successes they've had, what exits they've had previously, I think is incredibly important and adds a good impression when I'm reviewing a deck.
For sure. We get a lot of questions, at least on our end, about like what happens if the investor says no for whatever reason, which I'm sure it happens. Like that's probably the majority. That's the majority of, you get more no's than you do yeses. What do you do? Like, I always tell our founders at least to, at the very minimum, ask for feedback.
Yeah, I think.
So, yeah.
I think feedback is incredibly important, and obviously when I review a deal, we don't always take it to the next stage, but I always like to get back to the founders out of courtesy and professionalism to provide that feedback. Seeing as I see a lot of deals, I might be able to guide them as to how they can craft their pitch better. Something that I like to do on specific feedback is have a look at if the founders have included a slide of their roadmap or their timeline where they plan to be at certain points. This can be a crucial area for feedback because it's not always a matter of quality. Sometimes it's a matter of timing. But if I can see that a specific company in Q3 of 2026 is going to finish a clinical trial, I might ask them to reach out to us at that stage, and that might be the appropriate timing. So yeah, feedback is something that I try to do for all deals that I see.
Do you think, is it possible that if a deal that you would have said no to initially, eventually then you'll potentially say yes and there will be an investment opportunity?
Absolutely. It's, as mentioned, it's often a matter of timing and working on the growth side. A lot of companies that I see are possibly too early for us, but might be incredibly relevant a year from now. So this is when I ask founders to, I give them a specific time that I see in their materials to please reach back out to me and we can rediscuss the opportunity.
Yeah, so it sounds like keeping you guys updated along the way is the way to go.
Absolutely. And sometimes I'll ask for like periodic updates. If there's a company that seems really interesting, the timing might be wrong, I would usually go in a cadence of maybe twice a year. Please update me how you go after such and such a milestone.
Yeah. So that's actually something that like we do with the founders that we're working with. Is we started to encourage them. Hey, you want to keep the even if an investor didn't invest now, keep them updated. Put them on an email list so they can get monthly, quarterly updates on what you're doing, and you would be surprised at how many no's would actually eventually turn into a substantial opportunity.
I've never thought of that, and I think that's great advice. It's an extra email that the investors will receive, and maybe they won't respond in that moment, but they will know where you are in your journey, and if it's the right time, they might reconnect with you. So you have no harm in keeping investors up to date with where you are. Just an FYI email to say, FYI, we did this clinical trial, or we've reached this regulatory milestone, and we wanted to keep you updated.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how that would be, it's not a burden for you. It's like, oh, you just keep them kind of on the radar. It allows them to stay top of mind. I think that's for really for everything. We actually at LionRun, we work with a handful of funds because what will happen is a lot of more smaller funds, like more boutique funds, where like they don't necessarily have like a value creation arm to help to dedicate specific resources to their portfolio companies so then they can help them throughout like follow-on rounds. So like I'm curious, like from your experience and what you guys are doing, how have you seen when companies are about to raise follow-on rounds, like how to what extent can you guys support them versus like say like you guys got to figure this out on your own, or you guys have to do this internally?
No, so VCs, it's all about the network that VCs have. And VCs always, especially for companies they're already invested in, let's say a VC invests across many stages and they invest in a company at the seed stage, they would obviously love to assist that company in raising funds down the line. So it's a network business. VCs can absolutely help with warm introductions to other funds. And it's often the VCs that know which funds will like your company and which funds have an investment mandate that you fit into. So in terms of value creation, I think you should always leverage your VCs to help you down the line with intros. I also think that even if the VC is not specifically invested in your company, they might still be able to direct you to other VCs that will be interested.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When you get a deal and you start reviewing everything and going through it and realizing, okay, this is interesting, and then you have to bring it to the investment committee, right, of the fund. Can you talk about like how that will work? Because like I think a good point is to note is, I remember you mentioned it, but like if you're the analyst or the associate in kind of overseeing that deal, like you have to be confident to feel like it's good enough to then bring to the investment committee, correct?
Absolutely. So when I'm looking at a deal and, it's past the screening process and we're actually interested in taking a deeper look, we'd spend some time, couple of weeks on diligence, very thorough diligence, to take this to a more formal meeting in which we'll present it to the broader investment team. And at that point, there'll be a number of questions that are raised from, team-wide. And if I'm presenting a deal, I do need to be confident that I can answer most of the questions. But at that first stage, there might be a few questions that I need to take note of and go and do some research on. At that point, if I had a manual, for example, like a 60-page memo that's highly categorized, that would be an amazing place to refer in order to get answers to the common questions that would arise.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we'd speak to key opinion leaders, so experts in the field of this technology. And down the line, let's say another 2 weeks later, we'd host another meeting in which we now have answers to the questions that were raised, and we go through this again. After that meeting, if the investment team is still aligned, we might speak to some more key opinion leaders and would request some more information from the founders that should be in the data room, not always.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point, the kind of a very advanced stage would be presenting this to the investment committee for a yay or nay decision.
Mm-hmm. So what does that timeline look like from start to finish?
Timelines always vary depending. VCs like to do very thorough diligence. I would say for the first dive could be about 4 weeks. The second deep dive, or what I'd maybe call advanced diligence, could be another 4 weeks. And then a decision is made by the investment committee on whether to proceed or not. And that's kind of the final stages. And I guess it's always different, but there'd be negotiations on terms and so forth from that stage on.
Sure. So it sounds like, the average timeline from like, let's say outreach to, a yay or nay, I guess if a yay and you guys are moving forward with investments, like around 2 to 3 months, right? So like,
yeah, and it could be less. VCs will also work faster when they need to. But, doing a thorough job on diligence to make sure that you don't miss key points is really important. So we like to engage mindfully and make sure we take our time doing that, but obviously not take too much time to miss great deals.
So would you recommend for a founder when they're thinking about, their burn rate and their runway and just their general company roadmap to take that in consideration when they're looking at the whole fundraising process that's going to take that around that much time?
Absolutely. I think that founders should be incredibly well prepared and leave enough time for VCs to do their diligence. You don't want to be raising funds at the last moment. You also want to be partnering with VCs that really do invest time and effort in their diligence, because these will be the best partners.
And if they do come to the table with like a very proper, if they do come to the table with a very proper data room with everything, like, would you say that does speed up the process?
It absolutely saves time. If the VCs have access to the information that they need, without even having to request it, firstly, it's a very strong positive signal, and it absolutely saves time when we don't have to wait for specific documents, because, as we need to make decisions all the time, and we need the company's information to do so. So if you can furnish us with what we need before we ask for it, it will absolutely shorten the timeline to raising capital.
Would you say, is it a red flag, would you say, if a company is very, very urgent in terms of like their timeline to raise and they're kind of in terms of like their runway?
I don't think it's always a red flag. I think sometimes I'd feel when I'm looking at a deal, a sense of urgency from founders. That urgency can be very real if they are, running out of funds soon and need to close a round soon. But it also can be like a manufactured urgency in order to create demand and rush the VC into making a decision. So I try to differentiate between that and always to work mindfully and not rush through a diligence process.
100%. I mean, that's really great.
You need to have this undeniable stack of evidence that your company is what it says it is, and that's your data room.
Yeah. You're saying that's what do you mean?
Like, I mean, so telling a great story is incredibly important, but stories need to be backed up by
100%.
data. So, you need that undeniable stack of evidence that your company is what it says it is. And those are your receipts. Those are what we'll find in the data room, large partnership agreements, revenues that are always beating forecasts. So it's all good and well to have a great pitch deck, but at the growth stage, when you can pair that up with, financial performance to date, hitting milestones on time, regulatory approvals, that serves as the undeniable stack of evidence that you can live up to the story you tell.
Yeah, so I like to use this analogy, like a company is like an onion, or even a pitch deck is like an onion. And essentially when an investor is evaluating a company, they're essentially peeling off each layer. And each layer is essentially a layer of risk. And so like that could be the product, that could be the market, it could be the business model, whatever it may be. It could be maybe a first-time founder. Each layer is a layer of risk, and what you're trying to do is peel back each layer for them to then see the core. The core is like the opportunity, the true opportunity of the business. And so they look at each layer and they're like, oh, that's a risk, that's a risk. And so if you're able to peel back each one, essentially addressing all of their questions or concerns, then they get to the core of where the opportunity is, and you have to essentially prove that. And also another thing that we talk about a lot is that like a pitch deck is great. Anyone can have a pitch deck, but it's the strategy behind that can back that up. And that's why you need to have all the due diligence materials behind it that actually makes sense, or else it's just fluff. Like a lot of times we'll get...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you have a compelling story, but it's not just fluff. And when requested for materials that back up your story, you should have them ready.
Can you tell the difference between like when you get materials, if it's fluff or not?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very easy. You're hearing, for example, the word proprietary way too many times. Revolutionary, proprietary, game-changing technology, cutting edge. These are all buzzwords that, when used correctly serve a purpose, but when overdone, it's a really poor signal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, that's literally, we see that all the time. And like,
Yeah, never say revolutionize.
Yeah.
Just
Like,
don't do it.
I'm sorry, but like, what does that mean? Oh, here's a big thing. What if a company comes to you and they say we don't have competition? What does that make you
No,
think?
I think that's a really poor signal too, because competition validates that there is a market. There should be competition. And on the other hand, I think it's incredibly impressive when founders know who their competition is and go one layer deeper, not to only know who it is, but where the competition currently is in their development, regulatory, for example, where the competition is in terms of milestones. And to take it even a step further, if a founder can very accurately conceptualize why their product differentiates above each of the competitors, that shows that the founders really know the market they're operating in, and they can navigate a dynamic market, because competitors will emerge.
Yeah. Okay, so for all of you founders that say that you have no competition, you need to
Stop saying that immediately.
stop saying
Don't say
that. No more. You need to have there is, because what I tell the founders that we're working with is like, there's something else that people are using. Like, even if it's not like a different technology that is a direct competitor, like there is something that is being currently utilized in the market that essentially that is not what you have.
Yeah, and it
Like,
might be solving the exact same problem, just in a different way. They're still going to steal your lunch. So saying that you have no competition, it shows a lack of humility, I think.
and what do you think about when market sizing?
Market sizing is one of those things that founders show you the largest possible market, and this really is an incredibly important part for the VCs to dig in and do their own market sizing, and then maybe consolidate with what the founders have pitched. But VCs should never really rely on what the founders say the market is without doing their own research.
Like, I see a lot of founders that we work with, they get super, super caught up on TAM, SAM, and SOM. And like, usually the way that they're calculating that is not like, I hate to say it, but in my opinion, I think it's like the investor needs to know it's a big market. But by calculating the TAM, SAM, SOM, it's not that relevant. Like, for example, like what I would even recommend is show how you're going to get X, Y, and Z customers, and like show the roadmap for that, and then the potential revenue from that. And that's way more impactful than like trying to do the like top down TAM, SAM, SOM. It doesn't really mean much.
I'm totally with you on that. I think that it's important for investors to know that they're operating in a large market, but if you just show the TAM, for example, but without a plan to actually get there and realize and capture some of that TAM, it's not that meaningful.
For sure.
It's kind of the steps in between where you currently stand and that TAM are really important to demonstrate.
Yeah, and I like, honestly, like, I feel like once the TAM gets to a certain amount, once you're able to prove that the TAM is a certain amount, the rest is like, it's so arbitrary. Like, it's really like throwing a needle in a haystack. Like, it's not like, I wouldn't be able to see like what are the steps that you're gonna take to get your first, second, third customers, and then be able to do that at scale.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Yeah. So what else would you say a founder can do to make them stand out?
I think in 2 words, it's to be prepared and to be organized. And if you can create that impression, that like initial impression with investors, it's long lasting. It's really impressive, and it shows that this team has attention to detail, and it probably speaks volumes about this team's ability to execute after the investment is made.
Yeah, I really, really like that. And another thing is, like, I've been seeing a lot of debate, like, specifically on LinkedIn about, like, do you actually need a deck? Do you not? Should you have just, like, a 2-page written memo? Like, what? No. I mean...
No, you absolutely need a deck. It does not have to be 65 pages. It really depends on, the length is not that important, but I would say you absolutely need to have a deck that in a very clear and compelling way tells your story. It should follow kind of the format that investors are used to, and it should be something that tells your story without you having to be there. VCs might want to share that deck with other VCs, and you're not going to be there to tell that story. So this deck needs to speak for itself.
That is such a good point, because so many times I've heard founders say, I don't really need a deck because I'm just going to show them my demo. And I'm like, but you're not going to be in the room.
The demo is stage 2. Like if they like the deck, they might request to see a demo. You're not going to just get a demo in step 1.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And so I feel like sometimes I'm like talking to Walt. I'm like, no, I promise you, like, you're not going to be in the room to do that. And also, like, what makes you think you'll even get to that point that you'd be able to do that? So, like, at least prepare, at least have it ready, and then you'll get to hopefully then you'll get to the demo.
Fully agree with you.
Yeah, because I'll see, I don't really need a deck. Like, I'll talk my way through it, or I raised without a deck. But I'm like, look, like, that may happen. But I think that's very, very early stage when you're talking to, like, family, friends, angel investors who you have a personal connection with. But once you try to raise, like, more institutional money from VCs, like, they're seeing so many, I mean, you said it, you're seeing so many deals, like, and they're not in the room. You're not going to take a meeting with everyone. So you want to be able to have, like, something that you can review pretty quickly and then say essentially yay or nay and move.
Yeah,
through.
absolutely agree. You know, in cases it might be more relevant at the angel stage, where from family and friends you do not need a deck. When you get to VCs, I believe that you absolutely do need a deck. And it kind of reminds me of, like, you know, people who say that Zuck built Facebook and he's a college dropout. That's absolutely true, but he's completely the exception.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to equip yourself as best as possible to navigate your fundraising round successfully. You should have a great deck, the best deck that you can possibly have.
The best. Amazing. So I guess as we're wrapping up, like, do you have any final pieces of advice for founders that are, you know, potentially are trying to raise?
Yeah, so the best advice I can give is that founders should focus on what they're good at, which is building the company and executing on that vision. So if you can, you know, support is incredibly necessary when you're navigating such a complex process. If you can use, for example, LionRun Consulting to help you navigate and prepare for fundraising, you free up all your time to do what you're good at and actually build the company.
100%. Do you have any stories that you'd be able to share from your experience, you know, going through the process with a whole bunch of founders?
Yeah, I think that something incredibly impressive is when founders are transparent through good times and bad. You know, VCs want to know that their partners, their founders, are reporting their successes and their failures. So when something happens in a company and the founders automatically get back and report what happened and what the plan is, perhaps to resolve an issue without the VC even knowing about it, this is something that I urge founders to do. It's a really strong positive signal.
Yeah, I mean, I this is actually something that we do at LionRun. Like, we also do a lot of the investor updates. And one of the biggest red flags, or not red flags, but one of the biggest things that we tell, like, the founders that we're working with is, like, if things are going bad or something happened, that's when you should be over communicating. Like, it's always better to over communicate than under communicate, because if you go silent after, you know, you get an investment, it just makes you look really bad.
Yeah, communication is key. Being punctual and responsive with that communication, it really allows the investors to feel that they have great partners on the ground.
Is there a cadence that you typically see?
I think that it's cadence is something that is unique to the company, but it's always important for the founders to report at a certain cadence that's decided. Mm-hmm. But outside of that cadence, we really want to know that when there's a big win or a big loss, it would be great to know about it in real time. I think what's important is that often founders do this fundraising process one time, mm-hmm. so they don't really know what to do. VCs are seeing this every day. So, and at LionRun, you're seeing this every day. So you actually can lead them through that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like, for a lot of these founders, they're like I mentioned, they're 30 years in the industry and they're experts in whatever that specific thing is. They're not experts in fundraising. They're not in VC. And
there is a process.
There is a process. And, like, you and I, we see this every day. So it's, like, super formulaic. But for them, it's like, it's something new. So, yeah, I think it's important for them to maybe take it a little bit more seriously to some extent, like,
or just
prepare.
partner up with somebody that knows how to navigate the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do at LionRun. That's what we do best. Like, the whole goal of what we're trying to do is to bridge the gap between founders and investors and make it a more seamless process, and allow like us to do the heavy lifting for them, so then they can focus on their business, they can focus on what they do best, and then we'll essentially be able to bring that vision to fruition in a way that their time is best used elsewhere.
Yeah, I also will say that, seeing founders fundraise, it absolutely is a full-time job that distracts them from the main mission. So having somebody that can walk them through the process, or actually take care of that whole process for them, it frees up their time, and that's an incredible service to offer.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for coming. I'm super appreciative that we got to have this conversation, and I hope that this will help any of the founders that are out there that, are looking at fundraising and it looks like a big black box and they're not really sure what to do, and hopefully this could give them some insight into what they can do to best prepare and how can they position themselves to be successful. And hopefully this will bridge the gap between founders and investors and hopefully provide value to the ecosystem. So if you're a founder that's fundraising and you need help preparing all of your materials and everything, listen to this conversation. I hope you get some value from it, and will put you in a better position to potentially be successful in your raise.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome speaking to you, and look forward to coming back.
Thanks so much.